Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon,
Welcome.
Senator. Always a pleasure to see you. Do you all have a copy of my testimony? Because I have copies here if you want them.
Well,
Okay.
we don't have it.
And then there are a couple, I don't have enough copies of this legal memo, but you can share in the interest of preserving paper. So again, good afternoon, Senator Lon, Senator Gianaris, Assemblymember Jeffries, and members of the Senate Democratic Conference. My name is Dick Dadey. I'm the Executive Director of Citizens Union. We thank you for holding this important forum on redistricting and giving Citizens Union members of the public the opportunity to weigh in on this issue. We also like to thank particularly Senator Gianaris and Assemblymember Jeffries for their leadership on this issue by carrying reform legislation that would specifically create an independent redistricting commission. The time has come to end the rigged practice of gerrymandering for partisan advantage and begin a new reformed process that removes the conflict of interest that currently exists under LAT4, in which legislators essentially choose their voters before their voters choose them. The process of drawing district lines should no longer serve the self-interest of legislators, but rather the public interest of New Yorkers. You've heard from my colleague Susan Lerner and Professor Beveridge about some of the particular aspects of the goals of redistricting. I want to talk to you a little bit about the support that exists, what elements should be in an ultimately negotiated final settlement, and the call to action. As mentioned earlier, support for redistricting among the public is strong and growing. A recent poll showed that 80% of New Yorkers believe that some or all of the legislative responsibility for drawing their own district lines should be removed, and that they support an independent commission. To harness this support, Citizens Union earlier this year formed Reshape New York, a broad-based, nonpartisan campaign made up of 37 statewide and local civic-minded organizations, business groups, labor unions, and issue advocacy organizations, as well as prestigious New Yorkers serving as co-chairs. Attached to my testimony is a list of all the individuals and the organizations that have stepped forward to be a part of this coalition. Over the past several months, we've organized a variety of activities, including a lobby day here last week in Albany, aimed at making redistricting reform a reality in advance of the 2012 elections. Citizens Union has also worked with Mayor Ed Koch, who by his presence and message has brought this issue to the forefront by securing the pledges of a majority of members in both houses for reform during the 2010 campaign season, and I believe includes all of you here today. Support, as you know, among legislators is strong. 95 members of the Assembly is co-sponsoring Governor Cuomo's Redistricting Reform Act of 2011, and an additional 6 different members are supporting similar legislation supported by Assemblymember Hakeem Jeffries. In total, 79 members support your piece of legislation, Assemblymember Jeffries, and that makes 103 members of the Assembly. 103 members of the Assembly, both Republicans and Democrats, sponsor either or both of the two bills. In the Senate, 26 members have signed on to legislation sponsored by Senator Michael Gianaris and State Senator David Valesky. We've included tables of support as an attachment to our statement today. And as you can see, these things that are being passed out to you right now shows all 212 members of the state legislature and where they stand on each of the various pieces of legislation and on the pledges they have either made to Citizens Union or New York Uprising. It is stunning to see the level of public support, publicly acknowledged support that you and your colleagues have made to reforming this system. The time to act is now. We would like to note that recent opposition raised to Governor Cuomo's legislation on constitutional grounds by some is unfounded. Citizens Union secured pro bono legal counsel from Weil, Gottschall and Manges, a prestigious international law firm, who earlier this spring developed a legal memo that concluded that the legislation sponsored by those of you before me today is constitutional, noting that the bill is consistent with the legislature's ability to assign to a commission the responsibility to propose recommendations. As the memo clearly states, quote, The creation of an independent commission tasked with the development of redistricting plans does not violate the separation of powers doctrine because the commission does not itself enact law. The commission is purely investigatory and advisory body empowered only to recommend plans which the legislature may adopt, reject, or ultimately amend. The legal memo is attached for your reference, and I did pass out copies, though I think there are only 4 there. We've actually sent this to all members of the legislature. Given the unprecedented level of support for both reform within the legislature and the public, and now that an agreement on ethics has been reached, or so it has been rumored, redistricting reform remains the unfinished business that must be realized before the end of the legislative session. As noted by John Avlon, a Reshaped New York co-chair and a CNN political commentator, the rigged system of redistricting is at the root of the dysfunction and partisan infighting that plagues our country. States across the country have seen efforts to reform redistricting, and reform has been realized in several states such as California and Florida. As Avlon states, in rightfully taking to task this practice of gerrymandering, he writes, "This kind of cronyism and collusion definitely isn't democracy, as the Founding Fathers imagined. We know we can do better. You know we can do better. And New Yorkers know too. The integrity of our democracy depends upon fair rules, and partisan gerrymandering isn't fair, regardless of who the party in power is."